The thing I think that's happened with, especially since Trump, is that just a lot of the corruption and scamminess that was like underlying this market got exposed. And then I think that plus the announcement of the reserve last weekend having like XRP and Cardano in it, to me, it's just like for me it was like the administration just doesn't understand crypto or just lumps it all in as basically a grift. And so there's no differentiation between like Bitcoin and Cardano and XRP. But it's like all the regulatory good news just can't seem to pump the market because I think a lot of what it's saying is just like people don't believe that regulatory clarity will lead to actual use cases. They just wanted the government to buy your coins. Nothing said on the Hivemind is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our own opinions, not financial advice. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hivemind podcast. The goal of the podcast is to provide an inside look into what we like to call the Delphi Hive Mind, bringing together some of our brightest minds from each of the divisions to share insights, alpha, and shitposts. Today with us, we have the usual cast: Ceteris from our institutional research arm, Jan Lieberman, managing partner of Delphi Ventures, and Duncan, also known as Flood Capital, our shitcoin scavenger and investor. I'm Jose Macedo, and I lead Delphi Labs, our protocol R&D arm, focused on incubating and accelerating new Web3 primitives. We haven't recorded in 3 weeks because the majority of the team was in Denver. It's been a pretty eventful 3 weeks. Alts have been pretty much down only. Bitcoin hit 78K briefly. At the time we're recording now, which is Wednesday, the 5th of March, at around 4 p.m. UTC, Bitcoin's trading around 88K. Alts have rallied a little bit from the bottom, but still most of them down like 50 to 70 or 80% from the top. A lot of this is well, I don't know. What do we think caused this? People have various theories about it. Tariffs, um,
No,
like
it's all macro. Everything because everything there's been a lot of good announcements in like for crypto macro over the past month. Basically every case is getting ended. Um which is I guess like the biggest one. It seems like a lot of these ETFs are eventually going to go through. Obviously there's talk about reserve and all that. Um the SEC seems like they're putting together like a pretty friendly team, and so everything from crypto macro has been fine. Um, but yeah, it's totally driven by the top, right? The overall market, and this tariff stuff has obviously been spooking markets a lot, and it's kind of like going back and forth. And so, yeah, I don't really know what to like do when this is kind of the situation.
Yeah, I definitely think that the macro stuff kickstarted it, but I think there's like a lot of kind of structural supply and demand imbalances like going into this. And then crypto is like super far out on the risk curve, which just causes like alts to mega nuke. Like we had, all of the meme coin extraction that was just like ramping to like a pretty insane pace. And I think just like general exhaustion from like new launches. And then like the macro stuff just kind of like tipped the hat in one way because equities are only down maybe like, less than 10% from the highs. So there's still like, you know, could be more to go on that way. But I think like crypto, is very liquidity sensitive, especially like alts are just like the furthest thing out in the risk curve and like the whole financial market. So those things are kind of like the first to fall off as the market sells off and people get scared, liquidity dries up.
Yeah, it's been, I think, the most kind of extractive bull market, right? And that means it's a bit of a ticking time bomb. And when I say extractive, you have pump fund, right? You always get those tweets about them selling soul, like that's just money taken out of the ecosystem. Um, I think these president coin launches, you know, uh, have done it in massive size, right? Like never before have you seen low nine figs kind of just drained out. And so, um, there's, I think that stuff is really hard that takes time for new money to flow in, right? Like the market cap whole thing where, market cap rips higher, rips lower. It's that like that. I don't think that is necessarily extractive in the sense that, um, it's not as if, the amount of market cap that was lost is the amount of money that was actually pulled out of the system. Market cap is just a function of like marginal price times supply. And so, it's just if the bid dries up, market cap contracts massively, but it's not as if that's just capital, flowing out that was unrealized gains just round trip basically. And so here these are actual funds that the idea isn't to reinvest this stuff into other things, which you often see in crypto is if somebody makes money in one thing, they're looking for the next trade, and so it eventually kind of gets redeployed. This is basically very much one way flow at the moment, and I think that can put a damper on things combined with all the stuff you guys mentioned between macro and increased supply and launches.
Yeah, I mean the Malay scam and the all that stuff was pretty pretty bad for crypto too. People finally got to see like behind the curtain of what's happening with most of these meme launches and this narrative that these things were for the people. The fair launch compared to utility coins is just like has always been kind of total bullshit.
I think though that this is what kind of happens when there's like a new game slash narrative in crypto is that it starts off like relatively organic. Like the early memes, people bought because they liked the memes, like honestly, for the majority of it. And then, Whiff, I think Whiff was like pretty organic. You can say maybe there's some cabal stuff, I don't know, going on with that, but I think that was like mostly pretty organic. And then, some of the earlier meme coins, I think like Bowden and stuff like that. But then like the further this game goes on, the more and more of the later entrants who like weren't there for the original game either now try and like control this game, right? And then basically at the very end of it, I don't think even we shouldn't even call these like meme coins, right? And I also think it's like somewhat unfair to group like Trump, Melania, and Libra with Pump Fun because none of those are Pump Fun coins, and they're just like straight scams, pretty much, right? Um, and so this is what kind of happens though at the end of every like narrative, and once a game kind of gets run dry, is that the majority of the profits are just now being realized by like a very small group, right? Like that group gets smaller and smaller over time. And, I think the silver lining on the Libra thing is it does seem like memes, obviously nothing has really come back since then. But I guess like people now more so understand the game behind the curtains and will hopefully be like less willing to. I mean, like, there's like that JD Vance coin that might have done really well like a few months ago and it kind of fizzled out like pretty quick, right? So I don't
Yeah.
know. I think we're like it seems like we're moving on from the market we had, in 2024. 2025 is a very different market. Like the common theme is dispersion is still there, right? But I think what will get bid is like changing, right?
Yeah, I think return to quality is probably
Yeah.
the most rational thing, and the only way that the meme stuff kind of ends is just when people stop bidding, right? And once it got max extractive, right? Like Pump Fund was really good in terms of actually creating an environment where these things can launch in a much less ruggable way than was previously set up. And so I think it created guardrails around launches for that. And then these just ended up skipping the pump fund phase, saw the market cap of the top memes, and thought, let's just teleport there, and then we'll sell it all to everyone at that price, which is
Yeah.
completely kind of counter to
I definitely think
how the
like
original memes went up.
yeah, I definitely think zooming out, like on this cycle, I think like retail is probably pretty exhausted because I think this cycle versus like 2017 or 2021, if you frame it like that, I think retail has like had way less of a chance to make money this go around versus in those past two cycles, and I think that's what drives like a lot of the euphoria and interest, and like in 2017 you had like Bitcoin pull a pretty crazy multiple ETH pull a crazy multiple, and just like, this whole ICO boom. And then like once that kind of extracted all the money, the cycle ended, right? Once these ICOs extracted all the money, the cycle ended. And then you had in 2021, a lot of people were able to make money because it was just like helicopter money stimulus phase where like a lot of alts, no matter like what you bought, just kind of went straight up. There's a lot of money in NFTs for retail. It felt like everyone had a chance to make at least some money. Whereas in this cycle, like meme coin, that was kind of true for meme coins in like early 2024, maybe late 2023, which is kind of like the sharp money that's like, oh, these things like can rally a ton based on previous cycles. And then it turned into this game now where we hit like max extraction. And I feel like retail is pretty exhausted because every new retail entrant coming into the space, almost every new retail entrant coming into the space is losing money. I think that kind of like kills the virality effect that crypto has versus like in 2017 or 2021 or early 2024, like everyone was coming in and making money and telling their friends about it and talking about it, versus now like people are coming in and just like instantly getting like killed and extracted from. So I think that probably puts in like a shorter term top for retail for the foreseeable future, just because like no new retail entrant is coming in and making money and telling their friends and family about it because it's just like impossible to do. And then that probably is a shift back to fundamentals and quality for the money that's still in the space, is kind of like Jan and Cedros are talking about.
So I think I agree and disagree with that in like different ways. I think in like all the retail that came in 2022 and 2023 probably did well and probably did better than a lot of the OGs, I think, because they were using like Solana. And, that means you're buying sold, then you're getting the Jito airdrop, you're getting the Jupe airdrop, like all this stuff. And those kind of compound. But yeah, like
Like
everybody
not a lot of
then.
people were coming in 2022 or 2023. Like you could still come in like late.
Yeah, the majority still comes late. Yeah, the majority
You
that
could still
comes in
come in like,
late.
yeah.
Realistically, actually, I guess if you came in like March of 24,
Yeah, you were screwed.
like it's probably hard because like Sol's down from then. Obviously, the memes have like
The
imploded
only thing that's
since
up is
then.
Bitcoin since March
Yeah, the only
24.
thing up since then is Bitcoin.
Like in 2017, you could have come in like, pretty late 2017 or just like any time kind of in 2017 and done well. In 2021, you could have come in like, summer 2021, you could have done really well. Like you could have come in like relatively late into the cycle, and now it's like, okay, like you had to be like pre-March 2024 to have done like kind of well as like a retail investor for most coins, right? So that's, we're almost a year now, and Bitcoin, so like Bitcoin's kind of decorrelated from those alts, I think.
Well, I mean, it did. It's not you think they did.
Yeah, like I think as in it did decorrelate, but like that's, I think, different than previous cycles where we haven't seen this much of a decorrelation. And it's like, just as a retail participant, it's so hard to make money, especially when like everything's focused on these memes. And then like Libra is just like the end game of that. It's like, okay, this thing like rugs and it tops in 1 hour and rugs in like 2 or 3 hours. Right. At least with like Trump and Melania, like you had like, a few days or like a few weeks, or even like, early Trump buyers are probably still on multiples, but it's like, then we got sped around to like, okay, this whole cycle's
I
happening.
think the thing with the thing I think that's happened with, especially since Trump, is that just a lot of the corruption and scamminess that was like underlying this market got exposed. Whether it's, I think the Malay thing was especially that, like the guy, the Kelzer venture guy, whatever, was talking about how there was a pre-sale for the Trump coin at 500 million FDV and people got access to it. And then just hearing that guy on a podcast for an hour talk about, how this game's played and how they want to snipe it first so they can at least let the Ponzi run for a few weeks longer rather than it just dying straight away. Hearing about the Trump pre-sale and obviously like the Melania coin the same weekend as the Trump thing done by these amateurs. You literally have the president of the United States and his team who have access to, the entire industry, anyone they want, the smartest people in the industry working with this dude, right, on these launches. And then I think that plus the announcement of the reserve last weekend having like XRP and Cardano in it, to me, it's just like, for me, it was like the administration just doesn't understand crypto or just lumps it all in as basically a grift. And so there's no differentiation between like Bitcoin and Cardano and XRP. We just launched meme coins on this thing and partner with these like snake oil salesmen to do it and try and extract as much as possible. And to me, that's like, I don't know. I think there's some of that going on with like the price drops and stuff. And it's like all the regulatory good news just can't seem to pump the market, because I think a lot of what it's saying is just like people don't believe that regulatory clarity will lead to actual use cases. They just wanted the government to buy your coins. And obviously this is like very negative view on things. Like I'm still bullish crypto, but I am seeing a lot of this sentiment. And I do think the way the administration has engaged with crypto has been
Well, it's like a lot of people view crypto as a scam, and then the administration is literally like promoting that side of it. And so I think that's the frustrating part, where like I think all people really wanted was like to stop the regulation by enforcement and to kind of be hands off and kind of like lay some ground rules, right? But this is just going like too far on the other side. And then when the average person sees, when I have like friends and family, asking me like about this, and then they're like, "Oh, are XRP and like Cardano legit?" and stuff like that. It's just kind of frustrating, I guess. Like it's definitely gone way too far
these
the other
assets while
side.
like cutting a bunch of jobs, like
And,
Doge is
and,
like,
and
yeah,
yeah, like
so,
you're cutting like park rangers and like cancer researchers and stuff, and then what you want to buy like, and it seems like they're not going to buy
Well,
them, which I guess is good.
we don't know
Yeah,
what
you guys
But
are
that's the but that's the other thing.
indirectly
But why are
taking
they doing
funding
these?
but
from
why
cancer
announce it
Well,
research.
why
though?
announce it? Yeah, that's the other thing. Like,
Yeah,
why
like
announce
there's
it?
definitely an element of like just like inner circle stuff going on for
The
sure. Like you see
announcement,
these new coins
like
and
whether you intend to or not, it's just such a scam, right? Like if you intend to, it's obviously a scam. If you don't intend to, then why announce it other than to enrich some people who knew
yeah,
about it beforehand? It just
like
like it's just a terrible
who are you
look.
necessarily like blaming for this, right? Like I don't think Trump himself has any idea what is going on with these things, right? Like there's a lot of change happening. There's obviously going to be good change and bad change, and there's people kind of grabbing because there's so much change happening. There's people grabbing to like make some money off of it. Maybe it's his inner circle or who really knows who's actually like benefiting the most from this. But I think this is just like part of the growing pains when he's literally trying to like rejig the entire establishment. And obviously it's like really shitty to see that people are taking advantage of stuff like that. Even like, that hyperliquid whale went long like 300 million of like coins, like,
Yeah, but that was coming. That looks like it came from like stolen tokens. So I don't know if that was
yeah,
the
I'm just saying like we don't know any of these things, but it was like kind of funny timing. It's like the market's like mega nuked and this guy goes like 50x long leverage. And then the
I don't know
announcement.
if you need. So I don't know if you need to like. I get it. You're like, who's to blame for this? I don't know. But
It's
like, you
obviously
still need to. You
unfortunate.
need to recognize the fact that it's like terrible what is like
Yeah, it
happening
sucks
so
that
far.
Cardano and XRP are
It's
being
better
thrown in
than what we would have had with
for
a
sure. I agree.
I
Harris
don't actually
chain.
know. I don't know.
For sure, dude. That's
Yes,
the most
it's way
naive
better.
opinion I've ever heard in my life. If you
Yeah,
think it would
we
have
would have
been,
had the God
I don't
I
know,
candle
like
in
think the.
Bitcoin would be like 45. Everyone
I,
would be getting sued out of their ass.
but like
Like,
the
are
courts
you
have
kidding?
people were winning. Like people were legit winning against like the SEC and in the courts,
Yeah, but
right?
they
Like
have
Ripple
infinite
fucking
resources
won.
too. Like there are people that could win, but there are a lot of people that couldn't even afford to fight.
Yeah,
They
don't
would
get
have
me.
gotten
Listen,
more
I'm not
funding.
saying
It
the
would have
other
just
way
gotten
would
way
have been
worse.
good, and we would have been like
It would have been
rocketing and
insanely
everything.
worse.
I don't
Like
know
Yeah,
if it would have been
it would have been
the
it would have
really
insanely.
been
bad
worse.
part here is
100%
that
worse.
that Cardano and XRP got mentioned in the reserve, right? Like that, and then the
No,
like
there's a lot more than that.
the loosened regulatory climate created opportunities for grifters to do more grifting, but like it was almost inevitable without creating a very strong regulatory framework right out of the gate, and that wasn't going to be possible because that has to go through legislation. So just the environment of, all right, we're not going to be ruling by enforcement, just open the doors for grifters, and like grifters are going to grift, right? There is no world where you could have had both. And so like the really bad stuff has just been announcing that Cardano and whatever are going to be part of the reserve. If they're Cardano's like, I think 1 or
Trump and
2% of
Melania. You don't
BTC.
think that was really
Yeah,
really
that
bad?
sucked. I agree. But like, that's just a function of like the open nature of the regulatory environment.
I
Would
think
you
people just
rather
need to
have
learn.
like,
Like people need to take responsibility for
yeah,
buying this shit. It's like
100%. I'm not
obviously
defending it, but I think it's just
those are
it's like
yeah,
it's much better than the alternative.
yeah.
I agree, but like we do have like regulations around gambling for a reason, right? Like it's not a socially valuable activity to have a bunch of people. Just like obviously there's the freedom argument, but there's also like the fact that we have regulations around this stuff because it's not socially valuable for your entire populace to just be gambling on stuff that also doesn't contribute to the economy at all, right? If you're buying stocks or something, at least there's or like utility coins, I would argue, at least there's some contribution to people building real
Think what the
shit.
Right.
scammers will
It's
do
this
with all the
window,
With
though.
proceeds.
Basically, with the window of we don't have rules yet, but we're not really going to enforce. And then
yeah,
eventually we have to put in the rules. And in that period in between, max grift is kind of what happens.
I guess for me, it's like Harris and the Democrats just saw crypto as a total grift and wanted to kill it. And the hope was that the Republicans would see like the value in crypto and promote it. Whereas I feel like Trump just saw crypto as a total grift and he was like, all right, let's party,
Yeah.
like let's,
Well,
and like they
I just
both
think
see it as a total grift.
it's too early to tell. Obviously, there's people like I think how the conversation probably went is like someone running for Trump is like, we can make you like $1 billion if you launch this token, and he's like, oh, this is just like selling my merch, and he just says, sure, I'll send out a tweet. So like he never talked about it after that ever again, right? Like he literally mentioned, oh, I heard the launch went well. Like
Yeah. Listen, I don't know if
I
we have
definitely
to debate this too much. I
Yeah,
think we can agree that like okay, it's better than like it would have been if like Kamala won. But I think a lot of people are kind of disappointed as how it's like kind of gone so far.
yes.
Because it's just kind of it's really exemplifying a lot of the worst parts of the space, and that is the frustrating part. And I don't think it's like there's a lot of people I think to blame for this. So
yeah. We can move on. Maybe an interesting thing you guys were talking about how this exposed memes and stuff. So are memes dead now, or what are you guys thinking? Maybe Jan. Let's start with you.
I think it'll take a while, but I think you'll see resurgence when Bitcoin starts ripping again and animal spirits come back. People forget quickly. You probably end up getting like a resurgence in some of the classics, to be honest, and some random new funny ones. Um, that like I don't. There's not going to be this world where I don't think celeb tokens are going to be massive without some like really improved utility or access. Some of the kind of things that excited us early on about athletes getting involved and celebrities getting involved and using it actually in a productive way that engages with fans and rewards them. But like these pure memes at like high FDV launches, I think are toast because there's just not going to be a bid for them.
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's like a few categories of memes, right? There's like the OG whatever ones like Doge. They're celebrity coins. I agree. Celebrity coins were never memes. They were always just like grifts. I think like Mother is the only one, like Iggy. That's the only celebrity coin that actually she tried to like make something, and it still is just like down only. Um, there's these like country coins, which like those aren't meme coins, but they're launched on Pump, or sometimes not. They're just like I don't even know what the hell those things are. There's like hot topic of the day coins, like Peanut, Moodang, stuff like that. Maybe these like you call these attention assets. Maybe those things come back when stuff gets crazy again, especially with this like TikTok thing, right? The Reddit guy, if he's gonna actually buy TikTok and put it on chain, you can definitely see stuff like that come back, right? I think that was the Pump Funds founders' whole thesis, right? Was like tokenizing TikTok. And so if the Reddit guy is going to do that, put it on chain, then there's going to be assets with all that. So you could definitely see kind of this like attention trading stuff come back again. But I do think people are like, looking past into other areas. I think what's taken the meme bucket, obviously the AI stuff took the meme bucket in like Q4 of last year. Now that's been pretty wrecked too. And right now it's hard to see what people want to bid, right? like because everything's down. Like I'm bullish TIA, but it's it's like you're trying to look for legitimate tech now. I feel like that maybe has gone hammered a lot over the past year or so. And for me, I feel like TIA fits that bucket. Um, and it's like you're trying to look, you look through the top 100 assets. And it's like, what do people actually want to buy out of these top 100, right? I think I don't know. There's not a
And
lot.
maybe actually going, I don't know. You guys want to ask? I wanted to actually go backwards to some of the macro stuff just to see how long you guys think this regime will last, right? Because if you take Trump at face value, Trump and his cabinet, they're talking about like the 10 year, specifically in the short term, being the main thing they're focused on, right? And I mean, there was a great post by Dalio. I don't know if you guys read it. I linked it on Twitter about what you need to do to get the deficit down to this like 3% of GDP target, which is basically like a $900 billion a year reduction. Um, I think the most interesting thing for that or from that for me was just how much more effective interest rate reductions are than like literally anything else. Like there's some numbers on it. I don't think we need to go through them now. I put them in a tweet a while ago, but it's like way more effective than both tax spending increase and then a reduction than a spending decrease or an increase in tax revenue. And this doesn't even account for the second order effects, right? Where these things are deflationary, whereas an interest rate reduction is inflationary. But if he does have to get the 10 year down and do these tariffs and raise tax revenue, reduce spending, like it's going to take a while, and it's hard to see assets do well in that environment. Or at least that's the argument we're seeing a lot from macro people, right? There's uncertainty. You should go to cash. I mean, Stephen Cohen was bearish for the first time in a while. There's been a bunch of people saying this. What are you guys thinking? And how long do you think it lasts, and how are you positioning for it? I guess.
Yeah, I've been talking to Cedric a bit about this last week in Denver, but I think that it's going to be like kind of a short-term pain for long-term gain type sort of deal. So with the interest rates, trying to get them down, I think there's a massive refinancing. Also, like, yeah, so on $30 billion of debt at 5% interest rates, that's like 1.5 trillion, which is like 7% of GDP or something. Obviously, not all the debt is at that level, and the Fed funds rate has come down to 4.5%, but it is like a massive line item on the deficit. So getting that down definitely helps. I think like there's a lot of debt coming up for refinancing, because like if you think about 2020, that was like 0% interest rates. And then like, this is the 5-year term where a lot of that debt's coming up for refinancing. So trying to get the 10-year down, both to refinance like the US themselves, and then also just like the private sector refinancing, going from refining at like 1% to like 5%, is a massive jump. I think that's why, quite a few people are bearish. And then kind of just like the divorce with China and the rest of the world, throwing up these tariffs. Trump had an executive order where he's like banning Chinese private investment into certain like critical industries in the US. Basically taking like Chinese private capital, like leave the US. So some people have talked about fears around, China's basically been recycling their massive surplus into US equities the past 15 years. So if that flow were to start to reverse, that could be bad. So it definitely feels like there's a lot of risks. I think that Trump's probably going for kind of like short-term pain for long-term gain. I think like one of the craziest things is, the U.S. reliance on China on like defense tech and just like manufacturing. I guess more so defense manufacturing. We see this like Russia-Ukraine thing as maybe like a trial run for a China-Taiwan type event, and basically like with the U.S. kind of pulling out of Ukraine, I feel like China could definitely come in and take Taiwan. And I've listened to like Palmer Luckey, the CEO of Anduril, talk. He's probably talking his own book a bit, but he's saying like, China can make as many missiles in a week as the US can make in a year. They have 350x like the ship making capacity, Mark Andreessen's talked a lot about, how all the US drones like for the military are bought from China. So I think like a lot of people like in this cabinet kind of understand that the US is like beholden to China on a lot of these like real things. And maybe things got a little bit more real during COVID or Russia Ukraine. So to reshore some critical manufacturing is going to take a big shift in how the world has been functioning in the last 20 years. So yeah, that's probably short-term bearish for stocks. And like Besson has even said, Wall Street's had like a really great 20 years. We need to put Main Street ahead and US manufacturing ahead. So I think I'm definitely pretty cautious over the next, let's say like 3 to 6 months, depending how things play out. Obviously, like all roads lead to printing eventually. And maybe this is like, okay, let's front load all the pain and bad news, make all the hard decisions, try and set up the US for like a longer term, like in a better position. And then like, you turn on the printer, you do some massive infrastructure bill where instead of sending like $350 billion to Ukraine to like, have weapons blow up, you like invest that in like a bunch of factories in the US, right? So I think that it's probably short-term pain for a longer term
The
gain.
government's not going to invest in factories, though, right? It's
Yeah,
gonna be a
well,
private
no,
sector.
they could do massive infrastructure bills. Like, what's the difference between sending all this money to a foreign country for a war versus actually spending it on like factories or like something within the U.S. or like giving incentives? So that's
I
kind
mean,
of
they're
how I'm.
mainly sending like U.S. weapons, though, right? The money's invested in like U.S. weapons, like U.S. defense company weapons, and then sent to Ukraine. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I
but
agree.
that's still like money that's being government pays for those, and those blow up and are nothing for the economy. Versus you build a factory, it's actually productive. It's not a productive use of capital if it's just going to go into missiles that are blowing up, right? So I think I could see something like that happening, and so I'm kind of in the camp where it's like short term pain, maybe like 3 to 6 months, maybe longer, and then eventually something will get bad enough, or they'll have their ducks in a row where they can do this like massive stimulus into maybe midterms or the end of Trump's term or something.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Maybe Jan on the macro side, or how long you think it lasts? How you preparing, positioning?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same camp. I think it's short term pain. I think it's probably just consensus at this point. The yeah, the tricky thing is kind of like how long it lasts, and then how people want to play it. I think what you end up getting is a bunch of chop here and there, right? Headlines, people trading a lot of buy the rumor, sell the news type setups. A lot of kind of traders coming in when one side gets blown out, right? If there's just like poor positioning and then the market moves against it, and you have this kind of blowout move, I think you'll just see trades around that. But yeah, I guess what you end up trying to do is find good alts and get good entries in them. Crypto tends to front run a lot of things, and I think alts tend to front run BTC on a lot of this stuff. So we've seen some degree of bottoming on some of these alts, where Bitcoin takes a leg lower and they don't really move. The tricky thing is whether you'll see a bid into them, and it gets harder and harder as less money comes in and people tighten up their purse strings. I think it's gone into a just extract profits mindset versus long-term conviction hold mindset, which is very reflexive, right? If everyone as more and more people start to do it, then that's really the only way to play it, and that makes getting in and out of this stuff very toxic. You end up on a move higher, you think we're breaking out, and then you buy, and then you end up getting chopped up. So I think it's a tough market to trade if you're not good at it, and it's not everyone's good at every market, and I think it's important to understand where your strengths are and make sure you're preserving chips. If this isn't an environment for you, and I think it's not the environment for most, if this isn't for you, then you're probably better off waiting for very clear entries versus getting impatient and trying to catch a multi-day move kind of thing, because unless you're ready to trade out of it, chances are it's going to reverse. And then there's like the mental component too. I think if this takes weeks or months, it just drains and demoralizes people. So yeah, all that being said, we are like sentiment can reverse very quickly, and we saw it like after 78, right? We moved to 85, and then reserve announcement happened, and we pumped 10K in like no time. And so I do think that there's still a lot of dry powder that's looking for a reason to buy, particularly on the Bitcoin side. So I do think the reserve is a big one, right? So if you like reserve, the initial deadline was 180 days, so that puts it into like August, and then the sovereign wealth fund, which we haven't heard much about, that deadline was early May. Um, I do imagine there's going to be some rumors around what can happen with that and whether it can be a Trojan horse for BTC ownership. It is a tricky narrative, though, right? If you're really emphasizing cost cutting, then how do you kind of reinvest some of the cost cutting capital into speculative assets that enrich a certain portion of the population? Um, Maybe there's a world where you're swapping gold for it, right? That becomes, I think, a much more palatable way to deploy that money into Bitcoin. And then, yeah, I think there are going to be quality alts that end up gradually being more and more, where the supply gets gradually more and more cornered into higher conviction owners, and so that like a bottoming process where BTC dips and certain alts don't really dip is indicative of that, where you kind of see some true seller exhaustion. I think like seller exhaustion only happens in these like just prolonged downward markets because you have enough data points to show that, all right, maybe we're actually seeing a bottom here, and the marginal seller is gone. So I think like, yeah, finding plays you like and looking for those opportunities is probably the best bet you can do right now to really capitalize on explosive moves higher.
And I think if you've been in crypto for any length of time, it's really hard to catch these bottoms. And like once what generally the crypto like reacts so much quicker, right? It bottoms first, and then generally crypto bottoms, and then macro gets worse, and then all the macro prognosticators come out, like more pain ahead type people. And generally at that point, it's like pretty close to a bottom, and then it pumps off that and like leaves a lot of people behind. Happened to me many times over the years, especially initially. It's very easy to rationalize selling a bottom in crypto, which is why I think so many people do it, and why it pumps so quickly off them. On the macro stuff, it's interesting. I don't know. I know people don't come to us for this, but it's interesting. Like from the article, like just how much we need to cut. I just wanted to like um, kind of go over it quickly. So from the Dahlia article, he suggests like you need to cut basically 4% of spending, which is about 250 bill, and increase tax by like tax receipts by about 4%, which is about 180 bill. Spending like 70% of government spending is the stuff that you can touch and that they promise not to touch, right? Social Security, Medicare, etc. Which means that the 4% actually becomes more like 13%, right? That you need to cut off the discretionary stuff like defense and discretionary, which is quite a lot. And it's going to be painful. And then raising tax revenue, that's the other one where tariffs like have been projected to bring in about 180 bill. But if Trump does his tax cuts, that's going to cost like 400 billion or more in revenue. So there's still like a $200 billion hole basically, even with the tariffs, which just means either you need to cut even more out of spending, right? Or you need to lower interest rates more, which I think you can only do by really cutting spending if you're the government, at least like fiscally. Um, and then I'm curious, like with Doge, how many of these people can get reemployed productively? Like, the people who are working at USAID, like all the Washington complex, like all the nonprofit people, like they kind of relied on a system that doesn't really exist anymore. So I'm wondering how much you just have, like, I don't know. I do think AI is gonna like structurally increase unemployment. And I wonder if like these 400,000 people, whatever Elon wants to let go, if they ever like find another job, and I think all this leads to basically like my main thing with this is it all leads to rate cuts. The question is like how long it takes, but the end game is always just like rate cuts and money printing, and I don't think there's really another way out. Like none of that is the original basically Bitcoin and crypto thesis hasn't really changed.
I do think, like, I mean, it would, what he's doing is really good for America. Onshoring production,
Yeah,
reciprocal tariffs, like this, there are costs with deglobalizing, but the resiliency is a monster benefit, and it also just brings back a lot of jobs that left and in like left parts of the country that were or have been hurt the most, right? And so having these tariffs and these foreign country or foreign companies now building onshoring production is I think a really strong catalyst, and we've seen how quickly those things can get built up, right? Like Elon spun up these factories, and having him to some degree involved, um, I think will be really bullish. And so, like, yeah, there is pain, but I don't know if it'll be as long as possible, because like once you're starting to see some glimmers of it, markets will begin to price that in. Right now, it's like it's especially gloomy because you just have no concept of time on this pain. But I think once there's like some degree of certainty, right? Markets hate uncertainty, and this is like peak uncertainty on so many levels.
Yeah. But like on a relative basis, it's definitely going to be structurally more expensive to onshore stuff, right? Like, but I think that that's the trade-off. It's like the resiliency versus, when everything's fine in the world, it's like, okay, yeah, like let's max out, how cheap to make things and profit margins and all these things. But then, you know, Russia, Ukraine happens, like something were happen with China and Taiwan, like anything like that, or like COVID, where like all of a sudden it actually matters where things are made and like manufacturing, something like things get real, then that's where like that cost is, well worth it. But in kind of like the peaceful times, it's like not really, it doesn't seem worth it at all. And that's what's going to like kind of bring down stock markets and stuff. Cause it's just, there's no way it's good for numbers in the short term. But, if shit were to hit the fan, it would be very, very bullish America, which I think is, probably the right thing overall. But it's just going to be hard to see, I guess, like how long it takes and for the market to adjust that. Because it is like a massive regime change of like, since 1971, the whole, reserve currency status of the dollar has been, we'll send you dollars, you send us stuff. And that's just like hollowed out the whole country. So it's a reversal of that trend that's been in place for like over 50 years is pretty big. So I don't know how long it's going to take. But yeah, I agree with Jose. All roads lead to printing eventually.
I mean, the bear case is like the last time there were tariff wars like this, it led to the Great Depression. And so that was a different time when you didn't have like the US dollar wasn't the reserve currency. So if it got to that again, then you just start, I guess, turning on the printer and like
you
reversing.
had
But then,
tariffs in 2016, no? Like Trump did
no.
tariffs
I'm
in
saying like to this
2016.
level. And he had
Okay.
tariffs against like China and stuff, right? It's different. These are like blankets on allies and everything. So yeah, I don't know. It's like I'm not the one to navigate this really. Like I'll keep looking for like things I
Are
like
you
within
selling
crypto.
any crypto or are you just holding? You're just
I have what I
hodling?
have, what I have. I don't think I'm changing like my stable versus non-stable, and I'm not selling like other assets to buy more crypto. You know what I mean? I'm kind of just going with the flow at this point because I really have no idea. Um, like I think, as I said at the beginning, like all the macro crypto stuff has been good, right? And I do think AI will still be a driver for crypto as well over the next few years. And so there's like these two competing forces, and the macro stuff, the tariff stuff, all that stuff, I have literally zero edge in. And so it's like there's nothing I can really do with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. On the good announcement front for these cases, So I think there are certain things that move price and certain things that don't necessarily move price, or rather move price immediately, and certain things that don't. So I think those cases, the more prominent effect is the builder appetite, which I've kind of heard anecdotally from various people, both in terms of actually building and just existing builders that want to take more risk. Like seeing cases dropped against people who might not necessarily need to be dropped, or shouldn't be dropped. I think really opens the door for people who are thinking, I'm going to be doing something much less risky, but was previously deemed risky because of the regulation of enforcement. But now it's, if the case against XYZ was dropped, then what I'm doing should be totally fine. And so, but again, that operates on a lag. So, you're not going to see the effects of that for a bit.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to crypto stuff. You guys all went to ETH Denver. I didn't go. I was in Mexico chilling. What were the vibes like at ETH Denver? Like, give me the update. Like,
Yeah,
what was?
so
Yeah.
so I've seen a lot of people talk about how depressing it was and everything. I have a different take. I think ECC was depressing when I was there in the summer. It was basically all the same talks from a year before. Everybody was talking about like solving and like intense and L2s, and it was the exact same talks, exact same people from a year before. There was nobody at the main conference, and it was in, I guess, a depressing city. So, I mean, overall ECC I felt was really bad vibes. I think with ETH Denver, it wasn't. I think maybe the reason why I don't think ETH Denver was as bad is because I'm not an ETH maxi, right? And like reflecting on it, yeah, there weren't. I didn't go to any Ethereum specific events or anything. A lot of these I was going to were AI events. Um, there was like a searcher event, which is definitely more Ethereum focused, but it still had like Anisha and other teams and everything. And so I think for especially the AI stuff, there were a lot of people that were pretty enthusiastic um, about that. And that kind of brought like a new form of energy. I think, people understand that the perpetual infra thing is not going, is basically over. But I don't think that's depressing. I think that's like a good thing, right? To kind of shift the market dynamic. So I don't know. I don't know if people have other takes. I didn't think it was. I didn't think it was as depressing as people are saying on Twitter. It wasn't as electric as Breakpoint, but like Breakpoint was also basically the top of Solana this cycle.
It's just like, why does ETH put Max Resnick? Like, it's like weird cuck behavior, right? You just want to watch your chain get abused. Like, what is, you know what I mean? Like Solana and Breakpoint, you would never see, you know, I don't know who the biggest Solana critic is at this point, but they would never like put him on a
Gabe.
stage. Gabe Shapiro, yeah, exactly, talking about Solana. Like, yeah, I don't know what this cuck Ethereum thing is, but it's weird. Yeah, Jan, Duncan, any other takes on ETH Denver?
No, I mean, it was definitely very, at least the events I went to, very AI centric. So I guess I avoided the most depressing elements of it. Um, yeah, it seems like with ETH, it's like bullish the ecosystem, bearish the asset kind of thing, where, um, and so that makes the environment like you can cope your way into being compelled about stuff, but it's hard when the number kind of continues to go down consistently.
The operation was a success, but the patient died. Right. That's basically how I view Ethereum these days. So yeah, maybe people are disappointed because of that. I don't know. I don't know if I
Yeah,
have, yeah, I don't have much more to say on ETH Denver. I mean, the focus was definitely AI, right? So, as much as a lot of this AI stuff sold off a lot, it got pretty wrecked. I'm sure that sector is going to come back relatively strong at some point. You know,
yeah. Maybe let's go into that. Like what we're all bidding in this. Like what we're all bullish on in this in this market. I wrote a post on Twitter. I ended up having a fair bit of cash after this decline just because of the USD farming that I've been talking about for a while, and I've been bidding more aggressively than in quite a while recently. And I kind of focused it around what we discussed on the Hivemind a few episodes ago, where we said there's like a light moaning in the background. It's gone now.
It's drilling upstairs
All right, okay.
in my roof. Yeah.
A light
Suspicious.
moaning.
Yeah, just a little light moaning going on in the background.
Hmm.
Yeah. Focused it around like I think there's three apps like crypto things with PMF, token issuance, stable coins, and exchange, and kind of want to own the leaders in each of those. And to me, obviously, I don't think I'm going to go over the ENA thesis again. I think they're the leaders in stable coins. They just had the unlock today, which is what a lot of people have been waiting for. I actually think it's going to end up being a bullish unlock, but it's a very big one, so we'll have to wait and see on that. For the reasons kind of, yeah, I just think what are the conditions for bullish unlock? You need it to be telegraphed, like big price drop leading up to it. Ideally, a lot of secondary volume. An asset that people actually want, obviously, is kind of a must. Um, and like negative funding and price drop leading up to it. Kind of saw it. There's only a few of those in crypto, but you kind of saw it with like Aptos and I think Sui. Ondo recently was one of those. Yeah, I think this could have the qualities of that.
Swe didn't have a bullish unlock though. Swe got wrecked on its unlock.
Did it?
Yeah, it was last June, and I
When
know
was the
because I was
last?
holding it, and I didn't think it would
Okay.
be too bad, and then it got destroyed. But then all the like it pumped a ton after, right? Through the summer and everything.
Okay.
But the
Interesting.
actual unlock was very bad. You can go look at
I
the
must have got the
chart.
dates wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes anyway. But I'm looking to. I have about 50% of my exposure that I'm looking to acquire post unlock, just because I assume there will be some sellers just given the size of it. Um, and then yeah, like I think Sol is still the leading candidate to be the winning generalized execution layer, and that's like a big TAM. Even down like I think 95% nearly on Rev, it's still leading Ethereum on fees most days, and it's like definitely the leading L1 on this, and definitely on app revenue and stuff like this. So I think it's a good bet. I'm looking at others too. Starting to look at doing some research on others, Sonic and a few others. I'm definitely interested in Sui too. Curious if you're still holding that actually. I just don't see that many apps there. Um,
Yeah. I still hold it not as much as I did. Um, I still like the tech, but yeah, there's still not a ton of apps there. I think like for me, there's nothing super obvious right now. It's like I think Solana restaking eco is kind of interesting. I think like Bera is kind of interesting just because it has like a ton of incentives going on right now. Um, for like actually bidding a specific asset, the only thing I've kind of changed my mind on is Tia, just
yeah,
because I do think that like the environment has changed a lot, like the market's changed a lot. I think there's going to be a pretty big opportunity for them over the next couple of years. Pretty much base right now is taking like half of ETH blobs. I think they'll continue to take most of them. Ethereum is doing like some upgrades. Pectra testnet today, which it went through a bit of a hiccup for like 5 hours, but I think that was like a specific to that testnet. So I don't know if that's going to delay the update on mainnet or not. But regardless, like I think that over the next couple of years, I would expect Ethereum. I mean, I would expect Celestia to start taking more and more of like the DA market. And I just think it's been like hammered so much. I still have a lot of questions on like the long term viability of like DA only as a revenue driver. Like you kind of need to dream a lot. You need to have some pretty big expectations for the amount of transactions you're doing. But I don't know. There's a lot of things. It's like looking specifically at revenue for Tia is kind of mid curve because they can like 100x the cost today and nobody would notice. It's like it goes from like 0.00002 to like 0.002 or something. per transaction, so it like doesn't matter. And they're starting to talk about that more. I saw Mustafa had like a forum post on that. I think some of the supply side stuff they're doing, uh, which I would never buy something just because like of changes in the supply side alone. But I think combined with like me expecting Celestia to see a lot more adoption over the next couple of years is also good. And I mean, listen, it's like 100th of the valuation of ETH, right? I think you, like me personally, I try and look for relatively, and like the tech is good too. Like the Celestia team is really strong, and I believe in them as a team, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And so it's like when I look for things, I always buy stuff with 1-2 year kind of timeline. Like when I was buying Soul in 22, 23, I wasn't expecting it to like pump right away, right? I was just started to get very interested in it because I thought I had a good chance of like coming back. And I kind of feel like Tia is in that boat now. I think for infra, like abundance and just a lot of throughput is kind of like the only long-term solution you can really do. And like Celestia and Solana are just kind of like different ends on that spectrum, but kind of doing the same thing with like beefy hardware, right? And Celestia gets they just need to win roll-ups basically over the next year because they get a lot of economies of scale when they start and a lot of good network effects when they start like adding more. And so the left curve, it's a pretty big left curve thesis for Tia for me. It's like it's 100th evaluation of ETH. I think it's going to start to get a lot more roll-ups. I can see it doing like the majority of roll-up data in 2 years. And if all those things come true, I don't think the revenue matters too much in transferring it from like 100th of the value of ETH to like maybe a 10th or something, right? And like that's a very, that's a trade that I think is relatively attractive at these levels. So that's kind of like
what are the network batteries?
it has to do with like bridging mostly. So like when you use the same DA layer with bridging, it's a lot safer, obviously, because you're not trusting all the data is on the same shared layer, right? And then they're also working on stuff like the
We're
ZK
working on
account
other stuff.
stuff,
ZK, yeah, exactly.
right? There's also this paper that was released by the Bain guys, which was you can actually use a DA layer to verify computation. And so what this means is that you can basically just have like ZK rollups are just all like verified by Celestia, right? Instead of just posting their data there. So that could be like a potential kind of cool unlock. It's just like when I look at what I consider legit assets, right? It's like Bitcoin, sure, yeah, Bitcoin's great. Do I think Bitcoin? I'm not one of these guys who thinks Bitcoin's going to be like 500K in 2 years. I just don't. Okay, I think like maybe 150, 200, and like a good market. ETH, I don't know. It's ETH is like I think ETH is a fine asset. I'm not like a major ETH bull. Sol, it's like, do I think Sol is going to 1,000? No. Do I think it's going to 500? Maybe. Like I don't know, maybe. But that's like what a 3x from here. And then you look at all the other stuff, and a lot of these L1s I'm not interested in. A lot of the DeFi tokens I'm not interested in. And so it's kind of like what's like a legit like product, right? That is at a good valuation, and that's kind of what I see Tia. And like, listen, it's I'm still very skeptical, as I said, of like the long term purely being a DA layer, if that can be kind of like sustainable. But I think that matters more when Tia is trading at $20 versus when it's trading here post unlock, and as like it looks like some underlying fundamentals are getting better. So that's kind of how
Agreed.
I view Tia.
I mean, I was I
Yeah.
did the invested in Tia and didn't sell any of that. And I'm one of the big things for me betting on projects in crypto, especially now when I'm trying to consolidate into things that I think are long term winners, is just the team. And I do think the Celestia team is just like one of the best out there and has been since we first invested back in 21 or whatever. Feel similarly about Athena and Solana, like just teams we've spoken to for years, know really well, and have a lot of faith in. The last one I've started to bid finally is Hyperliquid. I'm curious, yeah, like
Ooh.
yeah. I mean, obviously, exchange is the most profitable business model in crypto, but I actually think they have a decent shot at doing all three, like exchange, L1, and stablecoin, which is basically the three biggest. business models in crypto, all in one platform. And it's sort of like if Solana had like Radium integrated right into the L1. It's
Yeah.
one way of thinking about it, but something a lot better than Radium, obviously, like an order book based, plus
but also
derivs,
a lot worse than Solana.
but also a lot worse than Solana. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it remains to be seen how good their L1 is. My main reticence with aping this in size is just that I don't know the team. I've never spoken to them, and they take a lot of shortcuts, like throughout everything. From the beginning with going closed source, with the number of validators, with the Bitcoin bridge. So I think there's just a lot of like risk that's hard to quantify. Um, but I do think at the valuation, which I'd consider it's like around 11 billion or whatever right now, because 30% is in treasury. It looks pretty decent.
Yeah. Like they're
Yeah.
making like even this past week, it's obviously been volatile, but they've been making like 2 million bucks a day straight to the burn. So it's like 700 million a year on Jose's adjusted market cap of 11 billion. Is still like pretty attractive for one of the best businesses in crypto, growing really fast. You have the call option of the L1. Assets are going up consistently. Yeah, I can't really speak to the security stuff, but they've had no issues so far, and they're holding a lot of money. So I think there's maybe a bit of like Lindy in that, but that's not my area. But definitely on a multiple and growth perspective, and just like core business model, it seems to be really attractive. Hype is still like, yeah, continues to be my biggest position. I think like BTC Hype, Sol, maybe I'll look at TS. Cedars has been pretty good on those infra plays. He was bullish Sol early, and Sue. So yeah, maybe we'll take a look at that. But I think like those 4 or 5 names seem to be pretty, like you can have like pretty good certainty that they'll be around in a few years, I think.
Yeah, you just look for stuff that should continue scaling and isn't hyper reliant. So it's like fundamental businesses that aren't hyper reliant on unsustainable speculation. Um, and I think those are because they make money on just broader demand for the space. Um, so yeah, those kinds of the one that I've been bidding. And then I have some TIA, but like the crypto is a graveyard of relative value comps. I think that stuff is not super foolproof, particularly because that you're assuming that the other leg is actually properly valued, right? Rather than it being over and maybe it compresses the other way. But or like what's baked into the premium, right? Like Ethereum isn't fundamentally based on fees. It's like the moneyness and the status is like the first prominent smart contract layer. So yeah, I mean, I bought some TIA just because it looks like it's actually bottoming out around this $3 level, and you've churned through a lot of unlocks, and you have catalysts in an environment where you don't really have too many. So yeah, no, the Cetera shill worked on me. And other than that, kind of being patient. I don't I don't know that there are any other obvious home runs. Like you can do
Bro,
these catalyst
virtuals,
driven ones
the
like
AI coins. I know
Maker.
you were. Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Maybe finish with
Yeah, Maker
Maker.
has the interesting thing of just like it's got that $1 million buyback. I forget the specifics of it, but there's a world where something like that makes sense. It's a game of hot potato though, so like that you just need to be kind of aware of the trade you're going into, where it has a finite length, and you obviously want to be getting out with buffer room because everyone else is thinking about it similarly. Um,
What
and
about
then
like
yeah,
the
the AI.
DeFi? Maybe like Liquidity and Aave, Ekubo, or Jordan constantly shows it
Yeah, I
on
mean, if like your position size goal is $100, then yeah, like some of those make sense. But if you're trying to put anything with a comma in it, then like good luck.
Yeah. I mean, Liquidity you can
Liquidity, yeah, that was mostly a dig
and
at
Aave.
Jordan and Kubo.
Yeah.
It is pretty
Yeah.
liquid.
Yeah. As is Aave. With Aave, obviously they've absolutely crushed it. It's just I feel like cash flow turning on for them could actually just like not be super bullish because people realize how little they make.
It's just a
And
net interest margin game, and it like it's not super exciting,
mhm.
especially if the demand to borrow isn't high, right? Then like the spread can't be high.
Yeah, yeah, they do have like the stable coin and stuff, and like other areas that they could push into, but and liquidity. How do you feel about that? It's like it's trading like 80 mil fully diluted. I honestly haven't done too big a dive on it. I just want to go read our report on it.
Yeah, I don't have a good opinion on it.
Duncan or Cedros, have you guys looked at it? Any of this?
No, I think one thing though is that like in crypto more than other industries, like yeah, Aave is a fantastic product, fantastic team. They're like the pinnacle of ETH DeFi, but that's not a reason why their token should go up at like this point with the price it's at, right? And I saw someone today that was tweeting about like Lido. Why is that not, pumping more? Because it's like a legit project, and like I get it, but it's just those there's it's hard. Like DeFi, there's no reason to value a DeFi token on anything other than pure fundamentals, right? Um, and I just think a lot of these are probably priced pretty appropriately. I
Yeah,
don't know.
and the reason we're giggling is because we're going to start making a list of all the things Satirist pronounces uniquely, and Lido being a popular
What
one.
else? What else?
It's just like cabal. How did you say it?
Cabal?
No, no, no. That's not how you said it.
Cabal?
Cabal.
Or
Yeah.
maybe I say it both ways. Yeah,
Do you
I
say
definitely
ETH?
no, I say
Uh,
ETH. I say ETH.
no, there's
There
other
was
stuff
another.
for sure. It's just like not coming to me.
Well, yeah, I say Binance. I know that anchor is
Nance is
pretty
a
cool.
good. It's just like old money finance guy.
Yeah, finance.
I don't know.
And yeah, so what about your eye bags then, Jan? Are you adding? Are you? Yeah.
I mean, I'm basically just kind of holding what I have. I'd like to wait for a more prominent reason to buy right now, other than them being down.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I kind of felt with them. Like I did put in some money the other day. I ended up keeping most in stables because the market ended up like ripping during that time. And I was like, am I gonna buy more? And it's like, I don't know. The thing is, if they rip, they have a lot of upside, and it just, I don't know. Those things are. I get fooled on those like every day, pretty much. It looks like they're gonna start breaking out again, and then it's right back. It's like a guillotine market, not a chop market. So
I do think though, like once BTC starts catching a bid, whenever it's like I'm not in this of the mindset that the cycle's done, right? And the cycle is just determined by whether BTC is topped. Like once that starts going, people will buy all sorts of random shit for absolutely no reason. So I think like as quickly as people are saying it's over, they'll be saying we're completely back and just start full boarding into random stuff.
I
So
mean, at some point, yeah, like I agree. I'm positioned that way, but I do think at some point that the alts have to prove themselves, and they won't just like forever be beta to BTC, right? Like because BTC has proven itself at this point, and then it's like okay, I wanna get rich. Like I think AI being such a strong narrative could end up also stealing some of this mind share from crypto, where it's like alts were kind of the way that people thought to get rich and speculate in 21 and even 2017 and stuff like this. But now maybe it's like Palantir or AI stocks,
yeah,
and if
yes and no.
like yeah
It's just like it's hard to get rich on AI stuff if you're retail,
yeah
or it's hard. Like it's also hard to get rich in crypto now. But I think it's easier for people to imagine a path where they can get rich in crypto versus like nailing Nvidia early on, kind of thing.
yeah it's true. Just public markets just don't have enough juice
To
left
work,
in them. Yeah.
which is like why pullbacks are good, right? Because it actually does kind of you need a pullback to get a meaningful leg higher. because then the risk return is really solid and people start piling in. That's not drilling. That's just the guy upstairs now.
That's just me drilling a door for my prisoner upstairs.
I think just talking about hyperliquid. I think the bear case. I'm like neutral on hyperliquid, okay, but it probably seems like I'm a big hyperliquid hater. And like disclosure, I'm a Monad angel, but I think that like with both Monad and Mega ETH coming to market soon, and I think a lot of the hyperliquid, the price of the token is because it's becoming an L1. It's doing the hyper EVM and
I
all
don't
this
think
stuff.
so. I don't. It's
Yes, it
too
absolutely has, man.
right now. The price is on like circulating market cap's like 5.5 billion, and it's burning 700 million a year on like
Okay.
a
Well, okay,
business that's like
okay. We'll see. We'll see. I think.
it's taking market share from Binance. Like it's 8% of Binance market share, 20% of Bybit, 20% of OKX. Like it's actually like it's getting up there into the big leagues.
Yeah, I mean, so Mega ETH and Monad aren't going to be competing against that like Perps product, and so if they continue to like dominating that, then it'll probably be fine. But
Yeah, I think like what big thing for them obviously, and I think the big product that's not really available now is kind of like a coin margin per product that is actually accessible by everyone, right? Like that's what they're building towards. Sexes have that. No dexes really have that. So there's no way to kind of have like easy access coin margin, which I think is really what's one of the biggest unlocks right now, because everyone is deep in alts and wants to bid majors and can't. And so if you could actually use coin margin to bid majors like that, I think is a pretty big unlock. So, I mean, they're building towards that, right? Building spot BTC liquidity, which allows for BTC to use as collateral, and then you kind of go further out on the spectrum. But
Yeah, I think other than the shortcuts, the other thing is like how big is this no KYC trading market? Like, how much bigger is it
Big.
than? What are you guys laughing at? Is it?
It's big. It's a big
well,
market.
I think one of the bear cases is that like you won't have a lot of professional firms using it, especially because like North Korea has used it, right? And
I think
so
there's a
at
ton
least
of professional firms on it, but maybe not like Citadel or
Is
Jump,
there?
but like
Why?
definitely the market.
Why?
I
I
guess
mean,
maybe like
you'd market make on it
offshore.
and stuff, but like, why would you use it as your main trading venue versus like a Binance, as our friend would say, or you know, or a Bybit or whatever? Like, it just seems like, you know what I mean?
Why would you use it? Well, it's where all the like a ton of retail flow is there.
Yeah, it's true.
Like
It's like since they have so much retail flow, it doesn't make it very enticing to professional traders, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how you get professional traders to use anything, right? Use a venue. Anyway, should we wrap it? We've been like over
Yeah,
an
let's
hour.
wrap it. Let's do it. All right,
Um,
guys. It's been another
let's hope for
episode of
some
the
good
Hive Mind.
announcements on Friday.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should do we suggested doing a live show during the Friday conference. Um,
Well, it's
that
going to
that would be
be
fun.
late. Maybe we'll do another episode next week. We'll see.
yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you maybe next week or in 2 weeks for another episode of the Hive Mind. Bye.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.